Hello and welcome to this demo of my prototype. I'm joined by my fiance to display what a two-person game would look like. The video will be mostly silent, except I will make an occasional comment here and there about some design choices and some mechanics. So first, we have setup. Each player is getting their striker character and rolling dice to determine their team size and affinity points. The premise that I developed for the game was from my time in quarantine and watching the world around me grow in anxiety and polarization from each other. So, to relate this to my own experience, I asked myself the question: is there really any difference between having a few close friends and having many friends whom you may not be able to be as close to? After all, we only have so much time. An important thing to note here about the characters is that they are randomly determined. Here, we both actually got four, which is the maximum in the prototype of the number of characters that you can have at one time. And because of that, our affinity points that we roll are actually spread quite thin, which reflects back to the original premise and really makes you think about what is the best way, or is there a best way, in order to answer that question. So I actually went into this with zero game design experience and zero creative writing experience. I say creative writing because the class that I did this for was actually a nonlinear narrative design course. I had no idea what that meant, but I wanted to do a class in games before I graduated with an economics degree. But I have played games for a long time, so you can see here the tracking that's being used to determine the levels and the health of each character. I've used dice on cards for a long time, playing games like Magic the Gathering. Another part of the influences for this work was Plato's allegory of the cave and Jungian shadows, of which are reflected in these cards, because as you gain affinity from them, you start to understand that their negative sides have positive attributes, and that is reflected in how they're worded, as well as when they level up, they become that positive influence. As we're getting near the end of the setup, I want to just mention a unique part of the mechanics here is how each player's objective is to position their allies in such a way to reflect their striker character around the board to then pass through enemy allies, thus dealing damage to them. And then ultimately the game ends when all of the allies of your opponent are defeated. This is intended to symbolize how we see parts of ourselves in those we become close to, and how their influence can really change our direction in life. So here's the movement phase, when you can move your allies up to their movement speed to any places on the board, trying to make patterns to have your striker then run over or cross through opponent allies and deal damage to them. There you just saw the striking phase, where the striker moved through the allies, changing position at each one that it ran into, passing over one of the opponent's pieces, and dealing damage based off of the most recent ally's attack power to that unit. So here you saw a strike dealing enough damage to remove a character from the board, and so you remove their piece and discard their card. Here we had a little bit of a rules retcon where my character couldn't be next to an enemy, so I had to move them. So through the process of creating this game, I was toying through a lot of different nonlinear narrative devices, but none of them really stuck for what I wanted to do, as I had this really core idea of mechanics which hit my premise very solidly. And so what I wanted to create from that is this experience of using those mechanics and creating a story by using those mechanics with the characters. So as they are attributed points into them, and then they do well in battle or do bad in battle, then the story kind of evolves around that emerges from those mechanics. I later learned from my professor that a man, Mike Sellers, who teaches at Indiana University, who made one of the first 3D MMOs, which is super awesome. He has a book that's about the systemic game design. So I went and got that, and I hope to be able to study under him in the next year once I graduate. I'm going to switch to a different view to show you the more player perspective. Here you can see connecting to those two allies and dealing damage to the character in the middle. Okay, and that's it. Thanks for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this demo of my game. I look forward to hearing any feedback that you may have, and if you want to play it, I can send you a copy. Thanks again. Bye now.